Welcome to the 9 o'clock meditation service, and we're going to be doing a call and response. And I'm always so blessed to have Louis on tabla and Larry on synthesizer. When they're gone, we ad-lib, but it's nothing like having that beat of the tabla. And Larry, he feels everything just intuitively. You know, his birthday's the same day as mine. It's like, can you have a better person supporting you in music? It's just because we're so intuitive. So we're going to do this chant and just relax and repeat with Larry. Okay. Go. Breathe out. Divine force is always present.
Divine force is always present.
From the historic records, good morning, everyone. From the historic records of a king that lived in the 1600s in India, it was in Baipur, India, and this king had an overwhelming premonition of early death, which his court astrologer confirmed. And the court astrologer recommended to him that he perform an unprecedented act of charity, which might influence the gods to look favorably upon him and extend to him a long life. The astrologer suggested to the king, whose name was Ibrahim, that's I-B-R-I-H-A-M, suggested to the king that he leave the palace, get outside the palace gates before sunrise, and give the first person he meets $100,000 in gold. And so it seems that the astrologer was an altruistic human being. However, he was not. he had hatched the entire plot with a conspirator of his own making. He had a friend who was scheduled to be outside that palace gate before the sunrise. And of course, the agreement was that they would split the $100,000 in gold, which would be more like several $1,000,000 these days. Anyway, as it turned out, the king got up before sunrise, got outside the palace gates, but the accomplice to the astrologer had that night a stroke that left him paralyzed, and he couldn't get to the palace before sunrise. And so the king strolled in the darkness, and the first person he met was a lowly street sweeper, a street cleaner of the lowest possible caste. And to him, he gave this bag full of gold, $100,000 in gold. And this street sweeper used a portion of that money, a large portion of it, to build a palace for street sweepers. That's a true story. That palace existed in the early 1600s, where the indigent poor could go and get a meal and have a place to sleep for the night. So it's interesting. It seems like some kind of divine intervention. But later on, that palace was constructed into, actually renovated into the largest Starbucks in the world. The story is true up until that point. How ironic. So I'm going to talk a little bit about alchemy today, the meaning of alchemy, the secret of alchemy. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but I have been a student of alchemy for decades. And it's right for you to say, well, how can you speak about the secret of alchemy if you haven't actually understood it? But I have fully understood it. In fact, I have a novel that's being published, will be out, I think it's out now on Amazon, titled Alchemist V. That's the title of it. But in any case, all of you and all of those seriously involved in Unity have been practicing alchemy, whether you're aware of it or not. When you practice this truth, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind in manifestation. You are practicing alchemy. First, let me give you a definition of alchemy from Webster's dictionary. Can we have this first PowerPoint, please? Alchemy, a medieval chemical philosophy that had as its asserted aims the transmutation of base metals into gold and the search for elixir of longevity, an apparently magical power or transmutational process. So the chemical philosophy that had as its asserted aims the transmutation of base metals into gold and the search for elixir of longevity. Well, if you've been practicing the unity alchemy of thoughts held in mind, produce after their kind, in manifestation, you may, like so many others in unity practicing that, have been disappointed. And your disappointment rides on the fact that the statement isn't complete. You see, loving thoughts held in mind, produce after their kind, in manifestation. This sounds a little bit, I don't know, dicey when I say this. But love is the only manifesting power. So if you don't have, in other words, if you haven't fallen in love with your dream, it will not come to pass. And if it does come to pass, it will not be really what you wanted. Because the very essence of God, in whose image and likeness we are created, is love. And we become expressions of that when we understand that our process here is about removing the blocks to love. So here we have now this alchemy. And when you get right down to it, if you practice these truths of transformation, which is really what we're involved in doing, because this transformation takes place in our presence, where we are in consciousness now. So if we are seeking the consciousness divine, it will occur because we're in love with the idea of divine oneness. So if we get to that place, you'll see a life truly worth living unfolding before you. If you don't get to that place, it's because the ego is terrified of the universal truths that we share. And if you are on this path, you will discover that alchemy is not the transmutation of base metals into precious metals. It is the transmutation of base consciousness, base emotions, base thoughts into precious consciousness, precious thoughts, precious emotions. And that is what we are eventually going to be understanding as our journey into the consciousness divine, the divine consciousness. It's not being held away from us by some distant God. Once we attain divine consciousness from a soul level, that stays with us. We go on to other dimensions of experience which are expanded beyond what anything we can imagine even now in this finite body, five-sense consciousness. But the object of life itself is to become one with God. And in doing that, we recognize our oneness with everything that lives. It's not difficult to understand. If we were to attain that oneness with everything that lives, everything we look upon would appear to us to be sacred, a part of God, and worthy of our blessing, worthy of our help, worthy of our love. So, can you even begin to imagine a world where everyone looked upon everything in it, everything? The water that gives us life, the plants that grow and give us sustenance, the trees, the mountains, the oceans, the most amazing creation, to finally look upon it as we should, as being absolutely sacred and worthy of our attention, not worthy of our disregard, not worthy of our exploitation, but worthy of our attention and our blessedness. And so that's where the truth will take us. How close you are to that is a matter, it's up to you. You can only define how close you are to that. So I'm going to go on and share with you why we are alchemists in the making. It is because it is the divine impulse of the Creator who is creation ongoing. When I say Creator, you may immediately see a separate creator. But when I say creator, I'm talking about creation ongoing, the impulse to create what is truly divine. That is what our calling is. And extraordinary masters down through the ages, you've heard me speak about them, who have become so overwhelmingly aware of the oneness of God in everyone and everything, that other people could not be sick in their presence. They could not carry the idea of illness into their presence. Trust me when I tell you, there are no hospitals in heaven. There are no situations of distress and suffering beyond our abilities to heal it. So there are dimensions of experience beyond us, out-of-the-body experiences, experiences that don't even include a body, except maybe possibly a light body or a soul consciousness. So we're on that journey. And these masters who so believed in the presence of this divine love as this healing power, that anyone who believed in opposition to that could not sustain their belief in illness or sickness or suffering in the presence of one like this. We come close to this with, modern-day master Eckhart Tolle. Let's take a look at what he has to say from Stillness Speaks. You can read this on page 84, paragraph 2. You are not separate from nature. We are all part of the one life that manifests itself in countless forms throughout the universe, forms that are all completely interconnected. When you recognize the sacredness, the beauty, the incredible stillness and dignity in which a flower or a tree exists, you add something to the flower or the tree. Through your recognition, your awareness, nature, too, comes to know itself. It comes to know its own beauty and sacredness through you. So, hold on to this idea. It comes to know its own beauty and sacredness through you. So you can understand that a master of life who totally has no second thought except the oneness of all life and the majesty of the creation of love, you can understand how it would bring out of someone else that higher level of consciousness. It may be only for fleeting moments that that person was drawn into the higher level of awareness, and then possibly later leaving the presence of the master, recreating an illness or some form of suffering. So you see, what you're hearing is alchemy. And it's mystical. We have taken the mystical out of religion. I mean, we haven't, but most of the religions of the world have succumbed to the so physically limited idea of separation, which generates concern and worry and fear continually through life. And yet it promises us some heaven in some distant place. We are heavenly beings in the making. And so let us keep in mind what is being said here. Through your recognition, that is your awareness, nature too comes to know itself, just as every other human being will one day come to know itself. It comes to know its own beauty and sacredness through you. And this, of course, is not just Eckhart Tolle sharing this truth, But we have it in most of the really excellent teachings of the masters down through the ages. So I'm going to share it with you in this way from A Course in Miracles. Can we have this next PowerPoint, please? You can read this in the old text, 162, paragraph 2. In the new edition, it's on page 174. See, the new edition came out long after I had memorized the old edition. So you laugh, okay. It's just like a put down. He couldn't possibly have memorized the Course in Miracles. Why can't you go along with it? Make me feel all right. In any case, we have this. If your brothers are part of you, will you accept them? Only they can teach you what you are. These are loaded lines, by the way. This is loaded. This is out of the thinking of the world. You don't get this in college. You know, this is outside the thinking of the world. Only your brothers and sisters can teach you what you are. How is that so? Well, follow along, because this is absolute universal truth. For your learning is the result of what you taught them. And that is better put this way. I don't like to edit the Course in Miracles, but I'm editing it now. It is the result of what you are teaching them. So if one's consciousness affects everything around them, because everything is one, then what is coming forth from your consciousness is appearing in everyone and everything and every circumstance that comes into your experience. So you can say life is not this way, or it's not very good, or things are going bad, or whatever, it's like this. Trust me when I say this. You have an out. Your out is to not try to fix, change, or manipulate those people outside, those conditions in the world, but turn within and allow the refined consciousness divine, the Creator who is love expressing, to come through into your awareness until it dispels all of your limited thoughts about existence being locked into this personality, body, self. Let it flow away from that and move as one serving that divine impulse. For this is what it is saying. And as you call upon it in others, it becomes real to you. God has but one Son, knowing them all as one. Only God Himself is more than they, but they are not less than He is, which is another promise. This divine consciousness, God consciousness, is not beyond us completely attaining. Would you know what this means? If what you do to my brother and sister, it should say, you do to me, and if you do everything for yourself, because we are part of you, everything we do belongs to you as well. So your life is mirroring back to you your consciousness in a very general way. And you see, we've been conditioned for long periods of time now to honor the illusion of separation. If you look at life from that past experience or the experiences of the past, you will see how just about everything in our outer-directed Western culture is motivated by fear. It's motivated by fear. You have to do this or that's going to happen. You better get this or you're going to be left out. You see, it's all motivated by fear. Worry. Let's worry about it. Worry about it. And the masters are saying to us, there's nothing to worry about. There's only one particular thing we should be understanding. What is it that we behold within deeply in ourselves to be true? What do you hold deeply to be true? And there you find it mirroring back to you the world you're living in. I'm not saying that generally, because all these different levels of consciousness are being expressed by human beings, that all of a sudden they're all going to change because you have attained this level. They will change in your experiences around you, everything around you. But the world itself is a place that we are called to love in a loveless place. We are called to love and express the divine experience of love in a loveless world, a world where people are conditioned to believe in separation and fear and use everything in their limited thinking power to manipulate, cheat, and steal from themselves. They don't know it yet, because they believe that that's the way to gain control over the world. You and I and no one else can gain control over the world in any way except the way I have just shared with you. Come to be a divine emissary of love, looking past the limitations and foibles of everything you look upon, and blessing and bestowing peace through your very nature, through your very countenance. You don't have to say a lot of things to people. You don't have to try to change them to fit your personal idea of life. You simply have to live in the divine awareness to see how it will affect everything around you. So I remember that I taught a class in A Course in Miracles many, many years ago. And I had a young man, I've told this story a number of times, a young man who just went berserk in the class. We were having group meetings, and he started tearing up the Course in Miracles in front of everybody and shouting. And I pulled him aside and talked to him outside the classroom and said, "What's going on?" He said, "I hate this course." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because it advocates that I'm supposed to forgive everyone, even the most rotten people in the world. I have to forgive them, or I'm not going to attain what the Course promises. And that's why I hate it." Well, he was right. That's exactly what the Course is saying. You have to forgive, release everyone. But what he was missing in the Course in Miracles was the divine truth that transforms one's life. We have to remove the blocks. And we do it through forgiveness. We do it through peace, bestowing peace and blessings to ourselves. Every true divine element must first be received. It's in our receiving of it that our consciousness changes and then perceives and experiences and influences everything around us. So I have one final PowerPoint I'll share with you from Eckhart Tolle, the modern day master. This is a good calling. Try this for at least a week, try it. This is our calling to a true yoga. When you receive whoever comes into the space of now as a noble guest, when you allow each person to be as they are, they begin to change. That is, you are not foisting any preconceived notions from the past on anyone. It's a complete surrender of relationships from the past. There's no preconceived notion that a person enters into that you hold them locked in that space. It's saying, when you receive whoever comes into the space of now as a noble guest, when you allow each person to be as they are, they begin to change. So, again, you have this divine truth being shared as a yoga for us to live by. It's not easy to take on our preconceived notions of life. It's not easy. What do you think would have to happen actually if you died and went to heaven in the way the world thinks about dying and going to heaven, which is totally erroneous, but anyway, if you think about it that way. When you got to heaven, you'd have to learn what it means to be a heavenly citizen. You couldn't bring your limited thoughts and feelings into heaven and carry on there, judging and blaming and fighting and manipulating. You couldn't do that. You'd have to get to the gate and they'd say, okay, we've got some classes going on for you. Here they are. All right, if you don't take anything else away from this talk, take this with you. You're in that class right now. So we're going to share meditation together with our bowls. When we get to the silence, if you don't have a particular meditation technique, you may want to use this one. By the way, there's very few original things I've ever been able to say. Deepak Chopra has written 85 books. He said everything. And he said it. He wrote these books before I got on the scene. So there's nothing I can say that's not a copy of something he's already said. But I did say one thing. I do have one thing. And that one thing is this affirmation I'm sharing with you. This is mine, not Deepak's. Okay? God is love. Love is life. I am God's life. I am. Use that when we get to the silence. as we go forth from this meditation to those places we occupy in time and space, let us go forth with a greater determination to be awake in the process of living and to pause whenever negative emotions rise or thoughts that are negative or limited, to pause and let them go and know that being still sometimes is just the best healing remedy. And for this opportunity in every moment, let us feel gratitude that life has a plan that is divine in origin and will, for each of us who applies himself, herself, become divine in expression. And to this we say, Amen. We will take an offering for unity now, and we're doing it in the way we used to do it, because we're lightening up, and we've got a lot of people that are ready to just to give from their heart. And we still have the dip jars in the lobby if you don't have cash. So you can place something in the basket, and we will, once we collect it, we'll bless it with our affirmative prayer. No, let's do that now. Let's bring to mind. If you don't have something you're going to put in the basket, that's fine. You can donate in many different ways this way to Unity of Boulder to keep this ministry afloat and going. So as we bring to mind that financial gift, let's bless it with this affirmative prayer. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, because I give. We have a limited fellowship in Fellowship Hall. It's okay to keep the video going. We have a limited fellowship in Fellowship Hall. If you want to stay, just have a chat. I think we have some tea in there. And we have hand sanitizers in the pew and in the lobby for you. Okay? Thank you for coming.